I think it is illogical that if you go and buy a prepared baby food, it's controlled by EU legislation, whereas if you go and buy fresh fruit from the supermarket, they may well have levels of pesticide considerably higher. And that's an anomaly which I think the government has to address. We should be aiming for the same standard in fresh fruit, because we want to be able to feed our children fresh fruit. That's a very good thing to do.
In part 2, more supermarket secrets. Buy one, get one free. Who pays? Factory farmed cows. And the bouncing strawberry. In recent years, as concern about pesticide residues has grown, supermarkets have been quick to jump on the organic bandwagon.
It's much harder to get things looking that kind of beauty pageant perfect that the supermarkets expect if you don't use pesticides. And the irony is that although supermarkets now stock quite a lot of fruit and vegetables that is organic, they really apply the same cosmetic standards. It has to look as perfect as the conventional stuff.
South Wales farmer Bruce Carlyle grows organic potatoes for supermarkets. These won't be harvested until the autumn. But this lot, 15% of last year's crop, has been left to rot. They didn't meet the supermarket specification, so Bruce didn't even bother to send them to the packing plant.
They would say, right, these are not good enough, take them back. That potato, which is actually a misshape, now that will get rejected as a misshape. That potato has got something which is called netting. It's a rough skin finish. Now that, to me, is a perfect potato to be consumed, but is rejected on skin finish. That's a potato which is a perfect potato to look at, except if you've got a blemish, a growth crack on the end. It could be bruising, but it'll peel off.
Of the potatoes Bruce did send to the supermarket packing plant, another 25% were rejected. The Soil Association says organic farmers commonly have 40% of their crop wasted, purely on cosmetic grounds. And guess who picks up the tab for all this waste? The supermarkets? Wrong. It's the farmer.
If our potatoes get rejected, that's our waste, that's our loss. You get used to wastage, which I don't think is right. You get used to seeing 26 loads of potatoes not thrown back in your face, but returned to you because they're not good enough. It's soul destroying, you know, it just doesn't go with organic farming.
And with so much waste, it's little wonder organic produce costs a bomb.
If the supermarket standards weren't so tight and so cosmetically correct, we would be producing produce at a much lower cost to the consumer and much less wastage.
So the consumer loses out, the farmer loses out, but at least Bruce Carlyle's cows are benefiting. He's fed 100 tonnes of last year's crop to his cattle. And they don't seem to care how ugly the potatoes are. British farming is in deep trouble. First there was BSE, then foot and mouth. And now, with supermarkets dictating that food either looks good or gets chucked away, farmers are being squeezed till they squeak. And what's bad for them is bad for us too.
Sometimes I scratch what hair I've got left, and I say, do consumers really understand that food comes from farmers? But equally, sometimes I look at farming and think, what on earth are they doing? Why would anyone farm?
Supermarkets are now so powerful. They've emerged as these incredible oligopolies who can dictate the price they pay. And they've sort of wiped out any other outlets. There are no real wholesale markets where farmers can say, OK, if you're not going to pay me properly, I'll take my goods somewhere else, because somewhere else doesn't actually exist anymore.
And you see an extraordinary thing going on in British farming. The collapse of profitability in farming, the collapse of morale, the collapse in numbers of farming, while retailing rides on into the sunset.
Critics claim that supermarkets have Britain's farmers by the short and curlies. One example is the special promotions they use to entice us into their stores.
Tesco, buy one, get one free. It's simple. You buy one and get one free.
Everyone likes something for nothing, and this commercial appeals to the consumer's mercenary side.
Tesco, every little helps.
But it certainly doesn't help Clive Baxter.
We suffer quite a bit when they do their promotions, or when we're asked to do promotions with them, particularly the buy one get one frees. That hurts us very hard.
Now, how does that hurt you? Because if I go in, I'm a big fan of buy one get one free. I always see things like that and buy it, but I always think that the supermarket's taking the hit for that. So that's not the case.
No, that's definitely not the case. Last year, because we were doing so much of the raspberries at half price or bog off, that cost me as a business, that cost me £50,000. And it is extremely difficult to run a business like that, and we just go from periods of euphoria to periods of despair.
It's not all negative. Clive says supermarkets have helped him become more efficient and produce better quality fruit. But he's totally dependent on them.
What worries me about our relationships with these very powerful people is that we are little ants underneath this great elephant, and we are going to get squashed.
While fruit farmers like Clive Baxter are worried, dairy farming is in crisis. Milk, one of the healthiest of all drinks. In supermarket jargon, it's a known value item. If the price is low, shoppers flock into the store. But the low price of milk has been disastrous for Britain's dairy farmers. In the last 3 years, 3,964 of them have gone to the wall. That's 25 every week. Many of them blame the supermarkets.
Perhaps the most obscene element of all is the supermarkets are prepared to charge as much as, or twice as much, for a bottle of fizzy water as they are for a bottle of milk. And we, the consumers, buy it.
And it's not just farmers who suffer. John Webster is Professor of Animal Husbandry at Bristol University, and he's worried. Modern dairy farming is becoming an intensive industry, and an increasing number of cows now spend most of their lives indoors. It's called zero grazing. This footage was shot by Compassion in World Farming at 2 intensive dairy farms in England. Instead of grass, the cows stand on concrete. And instead of grazing in meadows, they are fed mown grass indoors.
They don't have the satisfaction of grazing, they don't have the comfort of being at grass, of lying out in the sunshine or under the tree if it's shady. There's precious little joy in life left for the modern dairy cow. These are having quite a good time.
To produce maximum milk yields, modern dairy cows are pushed to their physiological limits through a combination of selective breeding and high-energy feeds. The impact on cows' welfare has been dramatic. Most supermarket milk is produced under the National Dairy Farm Assurance Scheme, which guarantees high standards of animal welfare. But although not evident at these farms, up to 40% of modern dairy cows suffer from mastitis, a painful inflammation of the udder, which can lead to diarrhea, dehydration and death. And even more suffer from lameness caused by standing in slurry.